So we start now because I see that you guys are so eager. So we are here, in three different time zones. It's very interesting for me to find out how to translate all these time zones and not to get too too messy with them. We start our day with our fabulous speakers. We have Erik Boekesteijn, who already you know from yesterday from the wonderful hat hat talk. And yes, of course. And we have we have the honor to have today with us IFLA's president, Christina Mackenzie from Australia. Hi, Christina. Thank you for joining us and for helping with all this. And Erik, he's as I said yesterday, I will say it again and again, he's the best library friend that you can get in this world. And he's always helpful. So go to Erik if you have any kind of troubles. He is also all over when it comes to innovation. He has he's involved with everything that's top notch and state of the art. He is a board member in Story House Chester UK. He is a consultant for multiple high associations that handle libraries and culture. He is a musician, so look for him because I listened to what he plays and I liked it. And he's also a children's book author. So Erik, you have the floor, and maybe you can introduce Christina because I think it would be so much better from you.
Thank you so much, Anka. And once again, this is the last day of an amazing conference. And I gave you the compliments before, and I will do it again. I think you and Claudia and the whole team, of course, did a very good job getting this off the ground and reaching out to so many people, inspiring, good talks, very well done. And definitely you should be very proud of yourself. But way too much flattering for me. I'm only this when it comes to my guest on the screen, Christine Mackenzie, president of IFLA at the moment in different times. And as you said, Anka, it is amazing to be able to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and probably good night, because there are people watching from all over the planet. And that is quite amazing. This is a conversation, as Anka said earlier, so please put your questions, your remarks, anything that springs to mind in the chat, and we will make sure that we will reserve time for your questions in the end, or maybe if there's a very important question in between, Anka will pop up and put it in front of us, and we will discuss. So be part of this because it's going to be good. Christine, welcome. You look amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Erik. It's lovely to be with you.
It's always a pleasure to see you. I was showing the hat that I was wearing yesterday, and I got this.
Oh, you got your Australian hat.
I got my Australian hat, and especially for the occasion. And we mentioned this earlier. I remember meeting you in 2008 and driving across Melbourne to get these UCK boots. For my daughters. I was not allowed to come home without my UCK books. We got them in some factory in the outskirts of Melbourne. It was really exciting. I got my, I saw Jane Grace was online mentioning coffee mugs. I got my Australian mug. So we're all set.
You're all set.
We're all set. Before we get to the really, everything is interesting, to the stuff about IFLA today, I just want to put you in the spotlight because I think you deserve it. And your presidency, due to circumstances, is restricted to being in Australia at the moment. So, and I'm sure the audience will be curious as well. Tell us a little about how you got interested in libraries and what road took you to become eventually like the most beautiful thing, president of IFLA at the moment, Chris.
Thanks, Erik. Well, before I do that, I'd really like to thank the Progress Foundation and Anchor and Claudia. I think they've done a fantastic job, and it's such a buzzy conference. It's so innovative. There's such a really good feeling about it. It reminds me a bit of the early days when we did the unconferences. It's got that same sense about it, and it seems to be really capturing people's imaginations, and that's fabulous. So congratulations, Anchor and Claudia and everyone at Progress Foundation. You've done a really good job to pull this together. And Erik, too, I'd like to say thanks to Erik. Erik has actually been running 2 conferences this week, 2 online conferences. I want to ask you a question, Erik. How many interviews have you done this week online?
Oh, I think it's about seven interviews already, and some discussions.
So. Yes, yeah. So you are a legend, and thank you so much. And we really appreciate everything you do for libraries.
You make me blush. Chris. About you. I want this to be about you.
Well, okay. So first of all, I want to tell everybody I've got my best dress on. And my best earrings, bought with Barbara Lisson in The Hague, and my brightest red lipstick, because for 6 months I have been wearing tracky dacks and T-shirts. And I thought, tonight I'm going to get dressed up. So I've got my red shiny dress on. Yep. It's been pretty quiet here in Melbourne. We've been in lockdown for ages. Anyway, so talking a bit about my career, it's impossible to imagine. It's 45 years since I started work at the State Library of Victoria as a reference librarian, and I've been in public libraries all that time, and I've managed 3 library services, one smallish local one. That was my first job as a manager. I suffered terribly from impostor syndrome. I used to drive down the highway every morning thinking, oh God, they're going to find out about me. It was a terrible thing. I'm sure a lot of people listening will empathise with that. After that, I went to Brisbane for 6 years, and that was pretty amazing because that's the largest library system in Australia. And so it was a great big canvas that we could work with, and I was lucky because I took over from someone who'd done all the hard work, getting all the because it used to be a terrible library service, and then Ruth Cameron came in and just sorted out all the buildings and sorted out the staffing structure and everything. So then when I came, I was able to do all the interesting, innovative things. And then in 2004, we decided it was too hot in Brisbane and we'd come back to Melbourne. So I moved down to Yarra Plenty Regional Library, and I was there for 12 years until I retired in 2016. And that's when I got to know you, Erik, in those Yarra Plenty times. I think probably when I think back on those 45 years, there's 3 things that really got me from being a very young reference librarian at the State Library to president of IFLA. And the first one was I did a job exchange to Baltimore County Public Library in 1990. The whole family went over. I had my ex-husband and my 2 kids. Well, he wasn't my ex-husband then. And so we went over and swapped houses with someone, Molly Fine from Baltimore County. And so we swapped houses, we swapped cars, and I didn't do her job, but I went and worked at Baltimore County. And it was in the time when Charlie Robinson was there, and Charlie Robinson was one of the really public library disruptors. Yeah. And he wrote the book, Give 'Em What They Want. And so it was an incredible experience to be there while he was there, because it absolutely turned my head around about how public libraries should work and how we look at customer service and programs and collections and everything. So that was a really big thing. And then the second thing was I did this management course in the early 90s, and as you do. And I remember a bit about the management course, but the main thing I remember is that we had an optional subject and we had to do something that we didn't think we could do. And so I figured I don't think I could jump out of an aeroplane, so I did. So,
I have never done that, Chris, but go on.
Yeah, well, it really did. It pushed me to my absolute limits, so I'd have to say that. But ever since then, you think back and you think, God, I did that. Like, I can do anything. If I can take myself there, I can do anything. So it's a really good thing to push yourself as far and hard as you think you can go. And then the third thing, and I was lucky. I was very sleepless last night, so I caught Deborah Jacobs and Jessica Dawes' session, their panel session yesterday at Occupy Library, and they talked about the Bertelsmann Foundation's International Network of Public Libraries, and Deborah then talked about what an impact it had had on her career. Well, I think it was the same for nearly all of us. We had made an immense impact on us. So it kind of set us up to just have the confidence to know people, to know that you could rely on people, you could ask people, they're your friends. And that's been held true for 20 years now. So those are the three big things, I think. And, the lessons, I think, are, take a chance and really cherish and foster your networks, because that's really, really important. And when networks become friends, that's even the best.
Yeah, that is the best, Chris. And so you joined IFLA. You became, of course, a member of IFLA, and you went to all the conferences and got inspired. Well, I think IFLA in Europe is pretty well known, but still, for the people who may have their own views on IFLA, it's very interesting to hear. How do you see? How do you see IFLA? It's existing now for 92 years, 93 maybe. And what is IFLA to you as a president? How do you look at the organization and the work it's doing?
Well, as you said, it was started in 1927, so it's been around a long time.
13 years, 93 years, yeah.
Yep. And they're based in The Hague in the Netherlands, about 5 meters from your office.
One floor up, yeah.
IFLA's the global voice of libraries. That's how we see it. And so IFLA, I think, has got two main roles. One around advocating for libraries at the very highest level. So that's at the United Nations, at UNESCO, at World Intellectual Property Organization. Those really big, important bodies that can impact on libraries, that it's too much for a single library service to go, or a national association. But if you can say that you speak for 190 countries, 150 countries. So we've got 1,500 members, mainly institutions and associations, because it's a federation of institutions and associations. So there's some personal members, but not that many, mainly. And as I said, we represent 150 countries, so that quite gives us a fair bit of oomph when we go and talk to places like that. And the other main thing, the other main role for IFLA is to support the global library field. And we mainly do that through the professional units. We have 60 professional units. Every single bit of the library profession that you could think of, I think, is covered by one of our professional units. I always say you will find your people at IFLA. Whatever your interest in librarianship is, you'll find your people. And so the professional units provide professional development. They do guidelines and standards, all sorts of things like that. And so they're the two main things, I think, the advocacy and the supporting the global library field.
And Chris, I know, like, you are writing also as well for our good friend Ton van Vlimmeren in Utrecht, a book, and this is still a bit of a secret. Nobody says anything here. On library trends of today, or what's happening in libraries and worldwide perspective. what sort of I know we talk about it, but what sort of trends do you think are most important at the moment? What's going on in libraries from your perspective, from being out there in Melbourne at the moment?
Yeah, well, I identified 10 trends, Erik, and I won't talk about all 10 today. I'll talk about 2 of them that I think are probably the most, well, it's a bit hard to say the most important, but really important for us to think about. The first one is the digital divide. Now, I was at the President's meeting in Buenos Aires last May when we launched the DA to I report. It's done by Tasha, Development and Access to Information report. And Tasha is attached to the University of Washington in Seattle. And so IFLA and Tasha worked together to create this report. And at the President's meeting, we had some of the authors of the chapters there. And, you know, you go to a lot of conferences and you hear a lot of things, but one of the speakers there really stuck with me. His name is Tim Unwin, and he's the chair of the UNESCO ICT for Development. And he spoke really eloquently about how the increasing technology is actually making inequality worse. And so as there's more and more sophisticated technology, the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And 44% of the world doesn't have access to the internet. I think this was 2018 figure. But, and like in the lockdown in Melbourne, so kids can't go to school. They're all doing homeschooling. And in Melbourne, the most livable city in the world until we got pipped at the post by Vienna a year ago, there's grandparents who are carers of kids having to try and do kids' homework on their mobile phones. So this digital divide is a real issue. And so the other thing he said was, it's not enough for libraries just to provide content. We've got to provide access to the technology. And so, you know, libraries are really good at doing that, I think. And a couple of examples, like in Victoria, we had I think it's still running, the Tech Savvy Seniors course. And that's a program run for people over 65. And they can log in and or go to their local library and have courses. And that was done in Victoria in 10 of the community languages. And that made a big difference to people. People learned how to Skype their grandkids and do things like that. So, and libraries all around the world are doing these sort of programs. Another one that really struck me, I was in the Philippines, the end of 2018 it was, and I went to Quezon City Public Library. And it's a really lovely new library, and it was it wasn't a real big room. Probably had 10 PCs in it. And there they help people with all their e-government things. So there you've got to apply online for jobs. You've got to apply online to get your taxi license. You've got to apply online for all sorts of things. And a lot of those people just don't have the wherewithal to do. So the library was providing this, and not just the technology, but also the people to help them. And that really struck me too. I thought there was a big queue out the side waiting to use it. But so libraries are really important in bridging that digital divide. And
that's just one of the trends, Chris. There's just
more to talk about if you like.
Well, before I say that, because like I said, we always tend to look at the internet and how many access points there are. I think in the Netherlands we have like a 95% of coverage of internet in the households, which is it's huge. But still, during the pandemic, we found out that we call them the lost children. There are quite a group of lost children out there who somehow, during the doing homework from home, as you mentioned, we could not reach. And basically, if you have one point of access or you have one laptop in the house, and there are more children, some children will not be given the computer to work on. It's as simple as that. So it's very hard to measure that digital divide, and I think it's as you mentioned already, it's a huge point of attention to us and what we can do. I know libraries have been lending out tablets, have been working on that and doing lots of stuff to help out and offering services to make that work. Very interesting and indeed very important. Do you have one more trend before we go?
I think the other thing, just to finish off on that, I mean, up until libraries were closed, the physical libraries were closed, they were holding up society, weren't they? They were providing that access, and now their doors have been closed in a lot of places, and so people don't have anywhere to go. So, yeah, really important.
Maybe,
going trend.
Yeah.
Can I talk about another trend? Because another trend I saw in libraries is creative spaces and learning spaces and co-working and things like that. And I was really lucky to go to Lockhal in Tilburg in the Netherlands. Yeah. Fantastic library. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's an old steam, it's an old train. What do you call it?
Shop. It's a repair shop.
Yeah. Great big building, and it's still got a lot of the infrastructure there. Amazing place. But they've got 8 different labs. And so they've got a digi lab, they've got a game lab, they've got a future lab, they've got a food lab where you can eat insects. They've got a learning lab, they've got a time lab, they've got a dialogue lab, they've got a word lab. And the future lab was one I really took to because they were running this program with primary school kids. And they'd said, okay, we're going to Mars. What sort of a society do you want to create on Mars? And, they came up with all these great ideas about what a perfect society would look like. And so this was I guess a 4 or 6 week program. And then they'd come back the next week. Well, actually, we're not going to Mars. We're staying here on Earth because this is actually a pretty good planet. It's actually better than Mars. So what can we learn from what we would like if we were living on Mars, and how can we make it happen here on Earth? And I just thought that was a really, really creative way of engaging kids and actually making a difference to the way people think about things. And the other one I really liked was the Time Lab, where they're looking at the history of Tilburg, and they've created their own typeset to write the history. They're also looking at the dialect that's used in that part of the Netherlands, and it's just so entrenched in what people are doing in the community, and boy, the community love it. So, yeah, I think that's probably a really interesting trend that's happening in libraries too.
And definitely, I recommend people. We decided not to use too many slides and videos in this talk because we want to focus on the conversation. But please look at Google and find some sort of videos on the interior design. It's really a gorgeous library. And what I also think is remarkable is that another example from the Lockhal, and they do it in more libraries, I know, is that they combine the maker movement, the creative bits with the 3D printers and the laser cutters and everything else, with the sort of what you mentioned, the how to create a more livable society, a better world, the Sustainable Development Goals, which are also important to IFLA. So they sort of make these boxes where they can measure the air pollution in the city, and the kids take them home, and in different areas of the city they measure the air pollution, and the data that comes out of that is all brought back to this big screen in the room where you can see what is the worst area to live in Tilburg and what is the best, and what needs attention to do something about it. So I think that change from offering like services to becoming a means to improve the world that we live in, and libraries taking an active role in that is quite important. So talking about SDGs, bringing it back to the SDGs, what is your take on the role that libraries can do? What can we do?
Oh, well, I think libraries have got a really important role to play in promoting the SDGs, and I don't think we should assume people know what the SDGs are either, Erik.
That's true. That's true, Chris. Thank you.
My dear friend Alison Dobie and I did this whole 1 hour speech at a conference on the Gold Coast in Queensland and talked about the SDGs. And at the end of it, someone stood up and said, "What's an SDG?"
Yes.
So the United Nations 2030 Agenda was signed off by all 193 member countries of the United Nations in 2015. And to create this agenda, this United Nations 2030 Agenda, IFLA was at the table right from the start, advocating for access to information, for universal literacy, for access to ICT, and for cultural heritage to be included in the agenda. And so the agenda was released in 2015, as I said, with 17 sustainable development goals and like 145 targets or something. And so this all together is going to make the world more sustainable and fairer. Well, you know, we're five years through. I don't think, in fact, I think I read just the other day that I don't think we've hit any of the targets, which is pretty devastating, really.
It is devastating.
So the first thing is not enough people know about them. And so we need to promote about them. Then the other thing is that I've been to quite a few conferences and seminars and things about them. And I remember the fellow who's in charge of them in Australia and Australasia said 65% have to be achieved locally. So we can't just say, oh, governments go and do that. You know, UNESCO, United Nations, IFLA do it. We've got to do it ourselves. And it's up to us for 65% of them. So libraries have a real role there, I think, in mobilising the local communities to think about the sustainable development goals and what they can do. Now, IFLA, as I said, supports the global library field, and we have a really important tool on our website called the Library Map of the World.
Yes.
And the Library Map of the World has a list of all the libraries, because people used to say, how many libraries are there? And we say we didn't know. And now we do, because we've got the Library Map of the World. And part of that is the SDG stories. So what libraries are doing to achieve the SDGs. And this story, I've told this story a few times, and it's most appropriate being in the part of the world that Occupy Library is being held in. And it's from Lviv in Ukraine. And Lviv in Ukraine is a city of 760,000 people. And in Ukraine, about 10 million tonnes of garbage every year are sent off to landfill. 40% of that could be recycled. 4% is being recycled. Anyway, in 2016, there was a really bad fire in a landfill in Lviv, and 6 people died. And the regional children's library there decided to do something about it. So they've been running a program called Garbage Heroes. They've held over 100 events.
I like it. Yeah.
They've touched 3,000 people, mainly children, to say, how can we, recycle things? How can we live differently? How can we live more sustainably? And it must be having an effect. If you've had 3,000 kids going home and saying to mum and dad, no, don't put that in there, put it in there, and we don't need this. And you know what I reckon, Eric? I reckon it was one librarian who probably came up with that idea.
One
person had an idea, went and sold it to someone else, and then it just grows. And so this is how we can really, amplify our efforts, I think.
I think maybe, Chris, that the Ukrainian librarian is listening in, because we have people joining us from the Ukraine. So maybe. Well,
if you're the person that came up with Garbage Heroes, good on you.
Oh, that's amazing. That's an amazing
then you can go to government and you can say, because government's got to fill in these targets things, and they've got to that it's voluntary reporting, but no one wants to look like they're not doing anything. And so what's ALIA, the Australian Library Information Association's done, has gone to government and said, look, libraries have done this and this and this for this carbon. And they go, oh, wow, that's fantastic, and put it in. And then
and now you get some money. Yeah.
So it's a really good advocacy tool for libraries. But, you know, most important, we're helping to create a better world.
Very, very, very true. And just going back to, I love your examples, and we should be talking about these examples. But I also want to talk a little about IFLA and the organization. I know that a couple of years ago, because I was involved in a bit of creating a new global vision after 91 years, I think it was at that time. Which is quite a step. I mean, for such an organization worldwide with the structure that it has. What can you take our audience? What was the reason to get to a new global vision? What challenged you to do this, to start this? Well,
again, one person. So I was on the panel to select the new Secretary General for IFLA, and we interviewed 3 people, and Gerald Leitner came to the interview, and we said, what's your vision for IFLA? He said, we need a global vision for libraries. With the increasing globalisation of the world, libraries aren't going to survive unless we've got a united voice. And we said, it sounds good. And it was actually 4 years ago, Erik, not a couple of years ago. Yeah, that we had our first workshop in Athens, and where we started this whole process of creating a global vision for libraries. And it's been the most amazing journey. It's included thousands of people. We've had workshops, we've had regional workshops, and then country workshops. We've had seminars, little meetings. We've had an online survey. We've had thousands of people contribute to that global vision. And from all that data, the huge amount of data that came in, there's one clear highlight, and that is that libraries are united in their goals and their values. And the number one goal is access to information and knowledge. And the other 2, there's 10 highlights and opportunities, but I guess the values part is more about access to information and knowledge, the commitment to literacy, reading and learning, and also responding to our communities. So they're the 3 really big highlights, I think, of that work. And it's led us on. I don't know that we knew what we were. Maybe Gerald did in his mind, but I think it's been a journey, you know. And so we created the vision, and then you can't just have a vision. I mean, yeah, that's nice. What are we going to do? How are we going to action? So then we've created a strategic plan, and the strategic plan 2019 to 2024. And again, a lot of input from the field, and a lot of workshops, especially with our professional units. And we created the strategic plan, and that's there on the IFLA website. Great if anyone wants to use it. You know, small, great slabs of it, take it, because the more we're working together on the same things, the bigger our impact's going to be. And then I came in as president last August, and I'm kind of looking at the third, well, not just me, but part of my presidential thing is looking at the governance of IFLA to make sure we've got the right structure in place to achieve the strategy. And so we've been doing a lot of work around that. And again, including all our members and volunteers to think, well, what changes do we need to make to IFLA to make it more participative, to make it more inclusive, to make sure that we're really including the whole of the world in what we do. So yeah, it's an exciting time.
It is. I mean, what I remember, because like in Athens, what the most I saw, we had this 13 tables, and at the 13 tables there were the 16 16 units, I think different units were all represented, but they were all mixed up. So everybody was sitting at different tables with each other. And I remember at first, because they were so different in what sort of libraries they were representing, it was sort of getting used to each other. And after 2 days, they started taking group photographs, because we sent them to different tables, but they didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay at their own table and sort of. So, as well as breaking down those barriers and bringing those different units together, I think that was for me, that was quite remarkable. It was quite beautiful to see that.
It was a fabulous energy in that whole workshop, and you had a lot to do with that too, Erik.
It was
you
an amazing.
Working away, doing your stories.
I was.
Good stuff.
I was really like, well, one of the most beautiful things in my career was being there. Really, I mean it. It was really, really beautiful.
It was.
We of course, time is precious. I want to also, I want to mention the idea stores as well. I know the Spina, I think particularly the Spina has been working on putting the IFLA idea store online. And if you haven't looked at it, to our audience, I strongly recommend to check out IFLA idea store, because there's lots of information there as well to look at. When we look back to Europe, you know, I've been in Romania, and I've been there with the PL 2030 group. I looked at libraries in Europe and the differences, and libraries in Europe are very diverse and different, as they are all over the world, both in budgets and in policies. How can we, I say we all, can support the changes that to have the services that we offer more similar, so everybody gets to benefit from the same things that you get when how can we get a sort of similar services all across libraries in Europe, all over the world?
Yeah, well, I guess they're never all going to be the same, are they? I mean,
no.
There's just the reality of resourcing and things like that, and even I think this was talked about when you and Eppo were talking, or maybe it was in the panel I was listening to about, you know, libraries are different in different places. So and Eppo, because I listened to your talk with Eppo this afternoon. Don't think about the dollars first. I mean, that is absolutely right. You can have the smallest, least resourced library doing fabulous things. It's about the innovation. It's about sharing ideas. It's about relating to the community and working out what your community wants and providing it within your means. It's been interesting here in Victoria. I mean, libraries have always been reasonably supported in Australia. They're not as well as the Netherlands or Denmark or, other places, but there's a general acceptance that, libraries are a good thing. But it's been really interesting in the last 6 months, especially in the lockdown in Victoria, because libraries have really done some innovative things. My old library service at Yarra Plenty, under Jane Cowell, they rang everyone over 70 and said, how are you doing? Beautiful. Do you want to borrow? You're doing okay. And this has just made the most amazing impact on people. It was on the national broadcaster's news thing the other night, national exposure to what libraries are doing during COVID. The Premier of Victoria was tweeting about it, how great libraries are. And
fantastic.
Libraries just haven't been great over the last 6 months, and it's building those relationships and talking to people. And I know on the panel that I was listening to with Deborah and Jessica, I think it was Ramoon from Eiffel talking about, getting this relationship with your politicians and things like that. So it's kind of building things up, isn't it? It's not sitting there waiting for someone to give you a lot of money, because that's not going to happen. And
that's
even
not going to happen.
I've seen libraries with beautiful buildings and beautiful collections and just kind of dead. So
And I think, Chris, as well, like these sort of conferences that we're doing right now, and this sort of talking, I think that the horrible virus accelerated this sort of communication and the way that it's so easy and fast relatively to get connected and to speak to each other, which also relates to your theme for the presidency, which is let's work together. And I think let's work together also helps to create more similar opportunities to deliver the best possible services. But what in your what is in when you think about let's work together? What do you need to do to be a good partner? How do you start opening up and working, showing what you got to give and what you want to take? How does it work in your view?
Well, I think you both got to be pretty clear about what you want out of it, don't you? And it's more about being sort of equal. And so I've got this and you've got that. And if we work together, it's going to be better. It's not kind of using the other person to get what you want. But I think back to my president-elect session in Athens last year.
Yeah, that was really cool.
You helped me with. And we looked at partnerships in that, and we looked at partnerships between libraries, between library associations, within government, between government and libraries, and also with our industry, the trade. And really interesting stories came out. And remember, we ran that little quiz. And we said,
yes.
What's stopping us? Why don't we collaborate? Yeah. And you chose the winning answer, and it was from Jane Grace, who used to work with me at Yarra Plenty, and she said, it's us. We're the ones stopping it. It's, for whatever reason, you don't want to work with other people, but we've got to work with other people. We've got to, as I think I said earlier, amplify our message, and we're only going to do that by forming really good partnerships, strategic partnerships with people. And it's not just libraries. I went to a conference last year with United Cities and Local Government, and they're working really strongly to get culture as one of the pillars of the United Nations 2030 agenda. Well, that's exactly what we want too. And so if we work together, the voice is going to be louder. So wherever you're working, if you work together, you're going to do better.
I hear you. And I also love the fact that now you're talking, I realize that it's so important to first get a clear understanding of the message and then to make it loud, to, as you say, amplify it. And I think those two steps are so basic, but so important. And I think if we do that well, people will come to us. I mean, they will come to you and say, I got this idea. Will you work with me? And can we do it together? And can we make our voices stronger that way? And I think that's really good. So, having said that, and we're going to the questions, because I know there must be people out there. I can't see my questions in the chat, so I don't know. But the Anka is coming up right now. Okay, Anka, let's first do some questions.
So
let's first do some questions, and then we go back to one or two fake questions that I still have.
I have some questions from people to other people in the chat, but I think that they are perfect also for you guys. So I will just start with Martin's question. Okay. Coming back to the lost children, a little bit, earlier. Yes. So his question is PC and internet access enough to get the lost children saved? And I think this is a great question, because no matter how developed you are, like Netherlands is, you still get a lot of lost children, and we have plenty of them, and everybody has. So your comments on that, maybe?
Well, first, I will take it first, Chris, before I give it to you, because on the Netherlands, I can say that even though there's such good internet connection, people are living with, often, like in some areas, there's quite a few people in one house and you only have one device. So basically, it's not so much the access to internet that is the problem as the access to the device. And also the quiet space. There's so many young children going to libraries to find a moment of peace and to work together in silence or in relatively silent areas, that gives them sort of, that's why they do their homework, that's why they chat, because at home it's sometimes not possible to concentrate. So besides access to internet, it's also that third space where you go to concentrate. Chris?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Well, I had a really brilliant thought too about that. Oh, yes. We always assume kids know about how to use internet and how to use the various, technologies, but they don't necessarily. They might know how to game or to do something like that, but they're not necessarily skilled in using what they need to study and to do their schoolwork. And I think their libraries too have been really useful because they provide that place. And as I said before, when they're closed, it's really hard for kids to find anywhere. So, yep.
Very true.
So there is a place there for libraries to actually make kids, even the ones that have the access to, we can see them as lost and guide them a little bit. And I have a great comment, not a question, but I will put it up because it's, I think it's a thing that we want to do. It's coming from Lepe, from Tampere. The World Congress 2021 also presents an opportunity to do a network of hybrid local studios. If network access is scarce, you could connect from a local studio instead and meet local colleagues at the same time. So maybe something is that you can add to. Yes.
Yeah. We're right at the very beginning of planning, of course, because we've just made the decision we made the decision a little while ago. It's just been announced like yesterday. And so we're right at the very beginning of planning how we're going to do it. And Occupy Library is a great example of how you can run a virtual conference and start creating a virtual community, because already I've met you, Anka, and it's lovely, and we hadn't met before, and just those connections. It's so that's a really good idea to create those local things, because then it's nice also for people to be together, isn't it? And to have the opportunity to chat virtually as well as in real life.
Yes. And from Suzanne, how does the idea of Occupy Library apply not only to public libraries, but to academic research and special libraries as well? So if you don't mind, I want to take a little bit of that too. It's like, for us, it was a surprise as organizers to see such a big crowd of non-public libraries, non-public. But libraries are generally public, but we have quite a bunch of people that come from academic libraries and special libraries that are interested in Occupy Library. So I would say that the concept of being useful for community is beyond the public libraries, though they are the ones to probably be more familiar or experienced with that. So your thoughts on that too? If any.
Well, I think we can always learn from each other's sectors, can't we? And
yes.
we and just because maybe there's been an emphasis on public libraries for Occupy Library, but a lot of the things that have come up around that I've just heard around networking, about being innovative, about being creative, about making do with less, all these sorts of things, they're applicable to all libraries.
And Anka, to add to that, we talked about it. I think I don't know, with EPO it came up. I think it's very interesting to look at academic libraries for instance, when it comes to the future of journalism, that sort of project. And I think my idea of future library labs in different places in Europe still goes. And I think we need academies for that. In the Netherlands, we're working with the Delft. TU Delft Library and the TU Delft University to bring ideas from libraries all over Europe, both academic and public libraries, to one sort of lab and have different coders, serious gamers, but different industrial design, and think about how to tackle those problems and bring them back to the libraries and share that knowledge. It would be wonderful if we can. We have one in Chicago. If we can have different places, we have the Edge in Brisbane. If we have different places where we can sort of in a not so expensive way share experiences, so we don't have to do it everywhere at the same time.
So we get a lot of ideas for the World Congress in 2021, and I cannot help myself but bringing them up. So from Louise, maybe the Congress can be 24/7, sessions going all around the different time zones.
Well, definitely. I've learned that this week, because there's a Computers in Libraries and Occupy Library on. Computers in Libraries, I think, is even worse than Occupy Libraries with the time zone. So it's all in the middle of the night for us in Australia. And so, yes, it's not the same. It's great to be live, and it's not the same. It's good to see the recordings too, of course, but
yes,
it's great to be part of it. And so, absolutely, you've got a strong champion there for making sure we have live sessions at all different time zones.
Yeah, if you need volunteers or if you want to know if volunteers work, I tell you that volunteers are the best thing that we had in Occupy Library. So with all the time zones, you need a lot of people to and you. I'm pretty sure that we can convince them. Yes.
So can we capture all that chat then, Anka? And because I'd really like to share it with IFLA, with Gerald and everyone at IFLA to pass on those comments, because that'll be really helpful.
Yes. Don't worry about that. And another question that was in the chat is like maybe the issue of the SDGs could help more funding for local libraries, and if I can add to this question to make it even more pragmatical, maybe you know of examples of success when what to do with the SDGs, because libraries do work with SDGs, whether they like it or not, they do contribute, but sometimes the the next step, the advocacy part, is not the greatest work. So maybe you can inspire us with some examples so that we can.
Well, perhaps I could inspire you more with the fact that IFLA's got a storytelling manual. And so that's been developed, and it tells you how to create your stories by from what you've done with the SDGs. And I think that's more valuable to think about I've done this thing, I know it relates to this SDG, how can I tell a story and who should I tell it to? And so that's all available on the IFLA website. So yes, just go in and have a look for it, because that'll be helpful, I think, for whoever's asking.
We will make sure that all the IFLA links that we got, we will share them with everybody, because there is a lot of work there and a lot of potential for making libraries better there. So we want everybody to see them as soon as possible. And Moika asks, can new discoveries about artificial intelligence help develop new skills in library?
Oh, over to you, Erik.
Yeah, well, definitely so. And like I said, there are certain, we are just at the beginning of thinking how to work this and what we can do, but there's definitely so many opportunities there. I think from, once again, the government perspective and from funding's perspective, I think we are just the communicators to the citizens. So if we want our citizens to accept that forms of technology, it needs to be explained. People need to be literate in every sense of the word. So I think if we take that role, we can also say to our government, okay, we're going to have to upskill our staff. We need money for that, and we have to reserve time for it. We have to make programs for that. So it could be a way at one point to get more money in, and B, to establish a stronger role. When I saw Chris in 2008, we were worried about libraries in the future, maybe the death of the book, whatever. I'm no longer worried about libraries. I see a greater need every day for libraries in the world. But we have to be ready to take that step. And artificial intelligence is not so much that we want to that we see a decrease in the role for librarians. I think we need more librarians, but we need skilled librarians. So we need training, and we need to be ready, and we need, once again, as Chris put it out there, we need to have a good story. Why are we doing this? What is the need for it? And why is it our role to take it? And I think we have that story, but we need to be clear about it.
Yeah.
I'm talking too much. Sorry, Chris.
I think that we talked just enough, as it's time to wrap up this session. And thank you so much for being with us, and thank you so much for sharing with us, and thank you so much for fighting for a bottom-up vision of international libraries, because that's something that I don't know any precedent in that direction in libraries. So thank you for that too, and let's work together.
Let's work together.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Erik. See
We
you.
leave.
Bye.